The volcano that keeps geologists awake at night is not the one you think it is. It is not the caldera in Wyoming that fills internet forums with doomsday predictions. Right now, more than 150,000 people are living directly in the path of a volcano that emergency planners consider a far more immediate and far more personal threat to American lives. They live in towns, go to schools, and build their homes on top of the debris field from its last major tantrum. And the mountain is weakening from the inside, not slowly, not over geological time. Right now, the threat is not lava. It's not an ash cloud that darkens the sky. It is something quieter, faster, and much more common. Mud, a river of it moving at 50 miles per hour with the consistency of wet concrete. It can be triggered on a clear day with absolutely no warning. And just 2 weeks ago, on July 3rd, 2026, a part of that mountain let go. A sudden debris flow, a preview of what's coming. So the real question is not if the most dangerous volcano in the contiguous United States will unleash a catastrophe. The question is, when it does, will 40 minutes be enough time to run? Mount Rainier was never supposed to be this dangerous. It sits in the Cascade Range of Washington State, a postcard icon of the Pacific Northwest. An immense glacier-covered peak standing 14,410 feet over the Seattle-Tacoma metropolitan area. It is serene, formidable, and beautiful, and it is actively rotting from within. The process is called hydrothermal alteration. For centuries, superheated, acidic volcanic gases and fluids have been circulating through the mountain's core. These fluids act like a chemical solvent, breaking down the hard, solid andesite rock, the very bones of the volcano, and turning it into soft, weak clay. Geologists have a simple term for it. They call it a soggy cracker. An immense, unstable pile of rubble held together by the sheer force of its own weight and the ice that encases it. But that ice is also the second part of the equation. Rainier is draped in 25 major glaciers. It holds more snow and ice than all the other Cascade volcanoes combined. A frozen reservoir containing up to a cubic mile of water, perched directly on top of a mountain that is slowly turning to mush. That combination of weak rock and massive amounts of water is the source of its primary threat, a threat that has a name. Lahar, a lahar is not a flood. It is not dirty water. It is a slurry of rock, mud, ice, and trees, flowing with the density of concrete. It moves at highway speeds down steep slopes, a churning, grinding wall of debris that can be hundreds of feet deep. It destroys everything. It buries everything. And when it stops, it sets like stone. The United States Geological Survey is not subtle in its description. Lahars look and behave like flowing concrete, and they destroy or bury most man-made structures in their paths. It is a force of nature that does not just damage infrastructure, it erases it, and Mount Rainier is a perfect machine for creating them. It has done so before, on a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. Around 5,600 years ago, the summit of Mount Rainier collapsed. A massive section of the weakened, hydrothermally altered peak simply gave way. It did not erupt in the traditional sense. It fell apart. The resulting avalanche of rock and glacial ice transformed into the Osceola Mudflow, a lahar so colossal it carried zero point 0.9 cubic miles of debris down the river valleys. It traveled over 70 miles, burying 500 square miles of the Puget Sound lowland in a layer of mud and rock. The ground that cities like Tacoma are built on today is in part the hardened remains of that single ancient event. It was a geological reset button, a reshaping of the entire landscape. An event that proves the mountain's fundamental instability is not a theory. It is a documented part of its history. It is what this volcano does. The Osceola Mudflow was a catastrophic collapse, but it is the smaller events that keep scientists watching the mountain so closely. Around 500 years ago, a different kind of lahar swept down the Puyallup River Valley. It was smaller than Osceola, but still massive, big enough to bury the valley floor where a town called Orting, Washington now stands. Geologists call it the electron mudflow. And its existence is what makes Rainier uniquely terrifying, because when they searched for the cause, they found no evidence of a major eruption. No ash layer, no lava flow. Nothing to suggest the kind of volcanic explosion you would expect to trigger such a disaster. The electron mudflow appears to have been a no-notice event. A large piece of the soggy, altered rock on the mountain's flank simply failed, mobilized the water from a glacier, and descended on the valleys below. It happened without warning. This is the scenario that haunts emergency planners. The reason Mount Rainier is one of only 16 volcanoes on the planet designated as a decade volcano. A list of the world's most hazardous due to their history and proximity to dense populations. It is not just about the potential for an eruption, it is about the risk of a major debris flow even without one. Andy Lockhart, a former geophysicist at the USG's Cascades Volcano Observatory, put it more directly. He calls these no-notice lahars the thing that goes bump in the night. Then, he adds, it creeps me out. When the person who understands the data best admits that it scares him, you are no longer talking about a remote possibility. You are talking about an inevitability with an unknown timeline. The town of Orting, Washington, sits in a deep river valley directly downstream from the mountain. Its 8,000 residents live squarely on top of the 500-year-old electron mudflow deposit. They are closer and more vulnerable than anyone else. Downstream from them are the larger cities of Puyallup and Sumner. In total, Pierce County estimates that over 150,000 people live and work in the direct path of a potential future lahar. They are not living near a hazard. They are living inside of it. The ground beneath their feet is the evidence of the last time the mountain let go. It is a quiet, daily gamble against gravity, water, and time. And the mountain is showing signs that it is restless. In the summer of 2025, something began to stir deep inside Mount Rainier. On July 8th, the seismometers of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network started picking up a series of small earthquakes. Then more. The tremors were happening in a concentrated swarm directly beneath the summit. For weeks, the mountain kept shaking. By the time the swarm officially concluded on August 25th, over 350 locatable earthquakes had been recorded. It was the largest and longest earthquake swarm ever documented at Mount Rainier. Public anxiety spiked. An earthquake swarm at a volcano usually means one thing: magma is on the move. An eruption could be imminent. But the scientists at the Cascades Volcano Observatory, people like Cynthia Gardner, the former scientist in charge, analyzed the data and saw something different. The quakes were not the signature of rising magma. They were the signature of water. Hydrothermal fluids moving through existing cracks and faults deep within the volcano's weakened core. The mountain wasn't preparing to erupt. It was groaning, shifting. The soggy cracker was adjusting its weight. The swarm of 2025 was not a sign of impending fire. It was a sign of the mountain's internal decay, a loud reminder of the very weakness that makes the no-notice lahar possible. The public exhaled, relieved that there was no eruption. The geologists held their breath, knowing the swarm confirmed the greater, quieter danger was very much alive. The system was pressurized. The plumbing was active. The mountain was unstable. Then, less than a year later, the mountain provided a live demonstration. On July 3rd, 2026, just a few weeks ago, a series of specialized sensors buried in the ground along Tacoma Creek on Rainier's southwest flank detected a low-frequency rumble. It was not an earthquake. It was the distinct acoustic signature of a debris flow. The sensors, called acoustic flow monitors, are designed to listen for the specific sound of a lahar on the move. A glacial outburst flood from the South Tacoma Glacier had suddenly released a pulse of water and rock, sending a debris flow surging down the creek bed. It was a small event. It did not reach the main Nisqually River. It threatened no communities. But it was a stark, real-time confirmation. The mountain is shedding material. The glaciers are unstable. The systems that are supposed to provide a warning, they work. But they are measuring a process that is already in motion. The July 3rd event was not a false alarm. It was a dress rehearsal. The people in the valleys below have accepted a strange and difficult reality. They know the threat is real. They know it could come with very little warning. And they know that when it does, their only option is to run, not drive. Run, the official evacuation plan for the Puyallup River Valley, is built on a single brutal calculation: a major lahar from near the summit will reach the town of Ording in about 40 minutes. In that time, traffic would become instant gridlock. Bridges would be impassable choke points. The only way to survive is to get to high ground on foot. So, they practice. On April 23, 2026, the towns in the valley executed the world's largest lahar evacuation drill. Over 45,000 students from the Ording, Puyallup, and Sumner-Bonnie Lake school districts participated. At the sound of the alarm, they filed out of their classrooms and began walking. Following designated evacuation routes, they hiked uphill away from the river valley toward safety zones. It is a surreal and sobering sight. Tens of thousands of children practicing their escape from a river of concrete that could erase their schools, their homes, and their town in less than an hour. The drills are a testament to the seriousness with which local officials treat the threat. They are also a constant, nagging reminder of what it means to live in a place where the geology is not settled, where the landscape is not permanent. It is a part of the curriculum, a part of daily life. A fire drill for a flood of mud. The first line of defense is not the drill, it is the technology. Since 1998, Pierce County has operated a lahar warning system. It began as a modest network and has been upgraded to a system of 42 massive outdoor sirens positioned throughout the Puyallup and Nisqually River valleys. These sirens are linked directly to the acoustic flow monitors on the mountain, the same ones that detected the July 3rd debris flow. The system is automated. The moment the sensors detect the telltale rumble of a lahar for a sustained period, they send a signal. The sirens go off. The 40-minute clock starts ticking. It is an impressive piece of engineering, a safety net built for an almost unthinkable disaster, but it is a system that only addresses the symptom. It can warn of a lahar, but it cannot stop it. It can give people time to flee, but it cannot protect the billions of dollars of property, the roads, the bridges, the homes that sit in the inundation zone. The sirens are a technological solution to a geological problem, and geological problems do not have solutions. They only have outcomes. The existence of the sirens is both a comfort and a confirmation of the danger. You do not install 42 emergency sirens for a threat that is merely theoretical. You install them for a threat you know is coming. The history of the mountain is written not just in rock, but in human experience. The first documented climbers to reach the summit, Hazard Stevens and Philemon Beecher Van Trump, made their ascent in 1870. When they were caught in a freezing storm near the top, they survived the night only by huddling in the volcanic steam vents that hiss and fume from the summit crater. They were warmed by the volcano's internal heat, the same heat that drives the hydrothermal alteration that is rotting the mountain from the inside. They survived because the volcano is alive. Even the last known minor eruptions, puffs of steam and ash witnessed by residents of Seattle and Tacoma in 1894, serve as a reminder. The volcano is not extinct. It is not even dormant. It is resting. This creates a fundamental conflict. The very features that make the region so desirable, the dramatic mountain views, the fertile river valleys, are products of the same volcanic forces that now pose an existential threat. The rich soil in the Puyallup Valley, perfect for agriculture, is the gift of past lahars that deposited nutrient-rich sediment. The flat land that is easy to build on is the surface of an ancient mudflow. People settled here because of the volcano's legacy, and now they live in its shadow. It is a paradox that defines life in much of the Pacific Northwest, an acceptance of a low-probability, high-consequence event as the price of admission for living in a geologically active and breathtakingly beautiful part of the world. The United States Geological Survey does not deal in emotion, it deals in data. In 2018, it published its updated National Volcanic Threat Assessment. The list ranks the nation's 161 active volcanoes based on a combination of hazard factors and exposure of people and property. Kilauea in Hawaii, with its constant eruptions, ranked number 1. Mount St. Helens, which famously erupted sideways in 1980, ranked number 2. Mount Rainier was ranked 3rd, but that number is deceiving. While other volcanoes may erupt more frequently, volcanologists widely consider Rainier to be the most dangerous in the contiguous U.S. The distinction is critical. The threat is not about the likelihood of any eruption. It is about the sheer number of human lives at risk from a single, predictable event. A lahar. That is what separates Rainier from the rest. The catastrophic potential is already in place. The population is already in the path. The trigger does not need to be a massive eruption. It just needs to be a failure. And yet, the public imagination remains captured by Yellowstone. The supervolcano. The continent killer. The spectacular, cinematic disaster. It is a threat so large it feels abstract, like an asteroid strike. It is easy to worry about because it is so removed from daily reality. Mount Rainier is different. Its threat is specific, local, and mechanically simple. It is a problem of plumbing and gravity. The water is there. The weak rock is there. The steep slopes are there. The people are there. All the ingredients are assembled, waiting for the final push. This is why emergency planners in Washington state run drills with 45,000 students, while planners in Wyoming are not mapping evacuation routes out of Jackson Hole. One threat is a media spectacle. The other is a public safety crisis in waiting. The challenge now is not just scientific, but psychological. How do you communicate a risk that is ever present but not immediate? A danger that could be triggered tomorrow or a century from tomorrow? For the residents of Orting and Puyallup, the lahar evacuation route signs are as common as stop signs. They are a part of the visual landscape, a constant, low-level hum of anxiety that is easy to tune out. The human brain is not wired to maintain a state of high alert for a threat that does not materialize day after day. Complacency is the constant enemy of preparedness. The 2026 drill was a success. The sirens are tested regularly. But the real test will come on a random Tuesday afternoon, under a clear blue sky, when a rumble from 20 miles away starts a 40-minute countdown that will determine the fate of 150,000 people. The volcano sits in silence, dominating the skyline. It is a passive giant, generating tourism revenue, shaping weather patterns, and defining the identity of a region. Mount Rainier National Park has been so popular that it has struggled with massive gate queues, dropping its timed entry reservation system for the 2026 season just to manage the influx of visitors who come to admire its beauty. They ski on its slopes, hike its trails, and photograph its glaciers, often with little understanding of the instability beneath their feet. The mountain that Stevens and Van Trump summited in 1870 is not the same mountain that exists today. It is a century and a half weaker, its internal structure more compromised, its potential for failure steadily increasing. What happens next is a matter of physics. The science is not ambiguous. The mountain will continue to decay. The glaciers will continue to provide a source of water. Gravity will remain constant. At some point, a piece of the volcano will fail. It could be a small debris flow, like the one on Tacoma Creek. Or it could be a massive sector collapse, unleashing a lahar on the scale of the electron mudflow or larger. The monitoring systems might provide a warning. The sirens might sound. The evacuation plans might work perfectly. But they are all reactive measures. They are a response to a disaster already in progress. They buy time. They do not buy safety. The story of Mount Rainier is the story of a slow, unfolding crisis happening in plain sight. It is not a dramatic tale of fiery eruption, but a quiet narrative of decay. The real threat is not the spectacular explosion the world associates with volcanoes. It is the insidious collapse, the silent failure. The world watches Yellowstone, waiting for a super eruption with a statistical probability of once every few 100,000 years. Geologists watch Rainier, knowing a lahar is a near certainty in a much shorter, human-scale timeframe. The drilling at Lake Mead was a desperate, audacious act of engineering to chase a retreating water source. The sirens and drills at Mount Rainier are something else entirely. They are an admission that you cannot engineer your way out of a problem when the problem is the ground you're standing on. The mountain is not just a feature on the landscape, it is the landscape. And it is coming apart. The clock is running, and the only question left is what happens when it runs out.